I'm being very honest when I say the end of 2020 was good for me as a reviewer for Player. Well, the start of 2021 is no different thanks to Gigabyte. Today they've sent over the Aorus 17G laptop for me to take a look at. But first, the Aorus 17G arrived in a large laptop-sized brown box, plenty enough to keep it safe from dubious courier companies, whilst hoping they recognise it was a laptop and treat it accordingly. Opening this up, and we have a second box. This one looking much more premium with the Aorus and G2 Esports logos, highlighting Aorus's affiliation with the G2 Esports Counter-Strike Global Offensive team. Inside that, a UK power cable, power brick rated for 230 watts, and the 17G laptop itself, and as first impressions go, it's quite an attractive piece. We might as well start with the lid, and like the rest of the chassis is a single aluminium piece, being CNC machined to give it a clean overall aesthetic. The Aorus logo is noticeable in the middle of the lid, which glows when the laptop is powered on. The only logo you'll find on the entire laptop, much like the badge on the front of a sports car, bar the Aorus label on the bottom of the monitor. More on that shortly. Flipping it over reveals a large black plastic bottom cover. You'll immediately notice the large mesh ventilation cutout covering almost half of the entire bottom cover, offering plenty of airflow under the laptop, vital for calling in this case. Notice the rubber feet to provide clearance for airflow under the laptop. Moving to the rear, and the entire section is open, offering more ventilation. Again, mesh covers the middle section, leaving 3 bars on the left and right open to allow heat and small dust particles to leave the rear of the laptop unimpeded through the heat sinks, revealing their locations. Around to the front, and there's not much worth noting here, bar a small grille in the middle. Moving on to I/O, the left side has a small ventilation cutout, a gigabit Ethernet connector, full-sized SD card slot, one of 2 USB 3.2 Gen 1 ports, a separate headphone and microphone jacks, and a second USB 3.2 Gen 1 port. Finally, the right side has more ventilation, the power connector, a HDMI 2.0 port, a mini display port 1.4 port, Thunderbolt 3 Type-C, and the third and final USB 3.2 Gen 1 port. Note, the Thunderbolt 3 port doesn't support charging, so the charger is needed at all times. Opening the lid, and we can see the 17.3-inch 1920 by 1080 IPS level anti-glare LCD display. This bad boy runs at 240Hz. Now, Gigabyte have told me that the 240Hz model are pretty hard to get a hold of, but the 300Hz display models are more widely available. Go and get one of them. A super thin 3mm bezel, which is surrounded with rubber padding to protect the seal when the lid is closed. The panel itself is tuned using X-Rite Pantone calibration before it leaves the factory, and is quoted to have a delta E of less than 1, 91% sRGB, 72% NTSC colour gamut, and a 343 nit brightness, though unfortunately I don't have the tools to accurately verify this claim. I can say though, using it for content creation and gaming, it does look and feel fantastic. Below this is the only other branding on the laptop, in the form of the Aorus text logo. Directly below that is the location of the webcam with the privacy slider and stereo microphones. The 720p 30fps webcam is fine, though it's pretty basic. Though I doubt many people want to use it due to its unflattering chin can angle. That also being said, the microphone is again fairly basic but works pretty well. Moving down, we can see the large power button under the webcam. This has a white LED which is illuminated when powered on. Below this is the backlit mechanical keyboard. It uses Omron B3KL low profile switches and is a full-sized keyboard. Cleverly, Aorus has lowered it down so it doesn't protrude above the chassis. Aorus claim this is the thinnest and lightest laptop with a mechanical keyboard. Typing on this keyboard is much nicer than I expected. It's super comfortable, and there's enough room below it to easily rest the palm of your hand so they're not hanging over the edge, causing discomfort. Something those with larger hands suffer from. The keys themselves have a tactile feel to them, with a low actuation force, meaning that gaming and typing is nice and easy with an actuation point of just 1.6mm. Overall, the layout is clear and concise with sensibly sized keys such as Shift, Caps, Alt, Control, and a full-size Enter key. It even includes a numpad, which is easy to use. My only gripe is the 0 key is shortened, which caused an occasional issue where I pressed the right arrow key by mistake. Should you also not be a fan of the backlit keys on the keyboard, you can configure them to your heart's content using the Control software package included, or turn the LEDs off completely for a more professional look when using it at work, school, or the office, etc. Finally, the trackpad is in the ideal location for typing and gaming. Not once did I accidentally move the cursor or misclick the pad when using the laptop, so that's good. Though the included software allows you to disable the trackpad when gaming anyway, again more on that later, It's by no means a large trackpad, compared to the likes of Apple or Dell's Ultrabooks, but nor should it be. It's big enough at 5 inches or 130mm for use while not gaming, and is super smooth and super intuitive to use. Left click is available on the whole trackpad, whilst right click is limited to the bottom right corner, as well as 2-finger scrolling, etc. You may have noticed a small black box in the upper left side of the trackpad. This is the included fingerprint reader, making signing into Windows 10 using a password or PIN a thing of the past. I'm pleased to report it works flawlessly and very quickly. Things under the hood are just as promising too, and Aorus haven't skipped out here. It features an Intel Core i7-10875H 8-core CPU capable of 5.1 GHz boost on 2 cores and a 45-watt TDP. Intel's 10th gen mobile CPUs also have a 16-lane PCIe link to the GPU for the first time, so this should also help with GPU performance. 2 8GB sticks of crucial DDR4 running at 2933 MHz. Intel UHD 630 discrete graphics for low power graphics tasks, paired with an NVIDIA RTX2070 Super Max Q using NVIDIA Optimus technology for its high performance RTX gaming features and goodness. Killer E2600 Ethernet and an Intel AX1650 Wi-Fi 6 with Bluetooth 5.0. And finally a 512GB NVMe M.2 SSD, in this case a Samsung PM981. A second empty M.2 slot is available though, so should you wish to populate this, you can do in the future. Sound is provided by a pair of 2-watt downward firing speakers on the front edges of the laptop. Normally this is a big no-no, but the implementation here is pretty good and more than enough for content consumption like movies or YouTube videos and gaming sessions where you forget a headset, and overall gets a solid B+ here, with good highs and mids, while lows, as expected, aren't anything to write home about. Though for 2-watt speakers they can get quite loud without any distortion, though they offer no surround awareness when gaming. A 94 watt-hour lithium polymer battery which boasts surprisingly good battery life. PC Mark 10's battery test, it lasted 5 hours before running out, which is very good, but using this laptop as a word processor isn't really what it was designed for. More on testing shortly. Gigabyte boasts about their cooling for the Aorus 17G too, calling it Windforce Infinity, with apparent 30% heat dissipation increase thanks to the larger 12-volt fans, 5 heat pipes and 4 exhaust vents on the Aorus 17G. Measuring in at 405 by 276 by 26mm or 15.9 by 10.8 by 1.0 inches, it's going to easily fit into any 17-inch laptop bag with relative ease, and weighing in at 2.7 kilos or 5.95 pounds, it's certainly no thick boy in either regard either. The Aorus 17G comes pre-installed with Windows 10 Home, but this model was sent with Windows 10 Professional installed. No real consequence here. The first software package that needs to mention is the Aorus Control Center. This nifty little software package contains a smart dashboard indicating real-time load and disk space used, the power setup including how much boost and turbo the CPU and GPU will use. App shortcuts can be added on the next tab. The Manager tab gives you an option to quickly change important features like NVIDIA settings, screen brightness, volume, battery and power settings, charging policy, etc. Fusion is the next tab, and this is where the keyboard LEDs are configured and or disabled. Macro keys can also be programmed here. The fan control profile is next, but more on that and testing results shortly. Finally, the Smart Utilities tab gives you the option to update installed drivers and software, as well as creating a system backup and restore. Web links to the user manual, FAQ, product registration and latest news are also included. Azure AI can be found installed on the Aorus 17G too. In a nutshell, Azure AI is a Microsoft artificial intelligence program that detects a game is running and dynamically sets the best CPU and GPU wattage setting for the optimal gaming performance. Everything is done automatically, so gamers won't need to do any additional settings. Unfortunately for me though, in testing there was no improvement at all to have it enabled over disabled, but I've included a link to Aorus's blog about Azure AI in the description below. Finally, 30-day trials to XSplit Broadcaster and Gamecaster are included with the purchase of the Aorus 17G laptop, so installers are included in a folder on the desktop for ease of installation. I much prefer this over them being pre-installed, as it gives you the option to use them or not, as does the lack of any included antivirus installations. Bravo Aorus for not shoving them down the throat of your customers. So let's move on to testing. PC Mark 10 scored a respectable 5,675 and highlights a lower video creation score than I was expecting. That doesn't mean editing and rendering video isn't possible, but that the Aorus 17G excels much more at mobile gaming, which is, let's be honest, its focus. 3D Mark testing needs to be done then, and with Time Spy being the DirectX 12 benchmark, it scored a decent enough 7,435. Firestrike is the DirectX 11 benchmark, and it scored 17,023. Port Royal is the ray tracing benchmark, and it scored 4,283. Very strong scores all round in the 3D Mark benchmark tests, highlighting a good mix of both the CPU and GPU Aorus chose to use in the 17G. The links to those scores are in the description below if you want to take a more detailed look for yourself. Games testing and Red Dead Redemption 2 fared well in this round of testing. Using the Ultra preset, we got an average of 78 FPS, highs were 112, whilst minimums were just 31. Although I have to admit gameplay felt smooth at all times, even during intense battles where FPS dips are the most prevalent. Cyberpunk 2077 is known as the new Crisis, and it would be fair to say it gives PC hardware a run for its money, but I'm pleased to say the Aorus 17G held its own here. Using the ray tracing medium preset, I recorded an average of 48 FPS, highs of 66 and lows of 31. Many would argue here that anything below 60F is unplayable, but it felt smooth and consistent with average frame rates, and it certainly was playable. It's fair to say that the ray tracing Ultra preset would have been unplayable here. CSGO, using the Auto Graphics preset, unsurprisingly got the best FPS from all the testing, with an average of 190 FPS, highs of 220 and lows of just 180, making it good enough for even competitive / professional gamers to use this as a daily driver. Note too that the Auto preset set all the settings to maximum, so turning it down could give you a full 240 FPS experience. Call of Duty Modern Warfare is, in my opinion, one of those games where you do need a good balance of FPS and visuals, especially when playing Warzone. So I ran the game using the in-game pre-configured settings by clicking the Reset tab button, getting an average of 90 FPS, highs of 105 and lows of 68 FPS. Again, a decent gaming experience. Battlefield 5 is the last but by no means least game on test in today's review. Using the Auto Max Fidelity setting whilst enabling a full array of DirectX 12, DXR, which is ray tracing, and DLSS as well as HDR, which allows the game to select settings which again it thinks is best for FPS and visuals, and with an average of 78 FPS, highs of 103 and lows of 58, it was a very smooth and super enjoyable experience. So, the Aorus 17G excelled in this round of testing, with games running smoothly, with a good combination of visuals and FPS. Again, thanks to the potent mix of the 10th gen Intel mobile CPU and RTX 2070 Super Max Q on offer. It would be easy to think that you were gaming on a desktop PC with this level of performance. Finally, the results were attained with the power cable connected for maximum performance, again with the AI enabled, but no performance improvements were made at all. So the tests were completed with it disabled and those results were shared. Whilst gaming on the battery is technically possible, the performance is reduced significantly, in the region of around 40%, and the battery lasted only 66 minutes before running out whilst benchmarking Red Dead Redemption 2, but it was playable at a locked 60 FPS, so I won't be recommending you use it for gaming on the battery unless you have no other option. So let's talk temperatures and acoustics. With all this performance on the table, how good are the thermals and acoustics, I hear you ask? Well, surprisingly good, I'm pleased to report, with the Windforce Infinity cooling doing its job well. The included software offers 4 fan control profiles: deep control, quiet, normal and gaming. Note I used the default out of the box normal profile for benchmarking and game testing, as this is the most likely use case. Stress testing the Aorus 17G with IDA64 system stability test for 30 minutes is a good way to test thermals and acoustics, as it's the worst case scenario for a CPU and GPU, as both are being hit as hard as possible. The quiet profile recorded temperatures of 71 degrees C on the CPU and 71 on the GPU. However, the quiet profile puts the CPU and GPU in a low power state, both of which are unsuitable for gaming and are probably set to make the Aorus 17G more suitable for productivity situations where you don't want the fans to be annoyingly loud. The normal profile recorded temperatures of 91 degrees C on the CPU and 83 degrees C on the GPU, and whilst high, this offers the best balance of temperatures and acoustics, but a certainly audible fan noise maxing out at 56% fan speed. This profile gets my recommendation overall. The gaming profile recorded temperatures of 90 degrees C on the CPU and 79 degrees C on the GPU. The thermals here are slightly better thanks to the faster fan profile, but here the fans are considerably louder, maxing out at 85% fan speed. I'd recommend headphones be used with this profile. The Deep Control fan profile recorded temperatures of 82 degrees C on the CPU and 69 on the GPU. Using this profile offers the best thermals, but at 100% fan speed, the Aorus 17G is uncomfortably loud. I'd recommend headphones with a noise cancelling microphone be used when this profile is in use. Aorus has included a maximum fan speed function which is activated and deactivated by pressing the function and escape keys, so the user has the option to use this as and when they deem appropriate. So with the game tests, temperature and acoustic testing done and dusted, it's clear the Aorus 17G is a very capable gaming laptop. It plays most with relative ease and is powerful enough for AAA gaming at high refresh rates. It's also just at home being used for media consumption with its quiet profile and loudspeakers. With content creation though, the i7-10875H did suffer from poor render times and downclocked significantly due to the AVX2 workload. This is also due to the power limits being shared between the CPU and GPU, though Nvidia's RTX2070 Supermax Q utilises dynamic boost, which balances the load between the CPU and GPU depending on the workload. This works much better for gaming, however. It's a very aesthetic piece too. Aorus claim that they've styled it like a sports car, and while I can see what they went for, I disagree with the styling as I think it's much nicer than that. The CNC'd full body aluminium chassis is stunning and super sturdy. It looks and feels like a premium product with branding kept to a minimum and tastefully done. I particularly like that the Aorus logo lights up on the lid when turned on with a soft white LED. I/O on the 17G is on par with its competition and has a full lineup as expected on a premium gaming laptop. VR gaming is also very much a possibility with this Aorus 17G, and I had a great time using it with my Oculus Rift S. The webcam could be implemented better, as could the quality. It's about as basic as they come, but functional nonetheless. I'm just not a fan of the unflattering chin angle, but locations for housing the camera, especially on the monitor, are limited thanks to this super thin bezel. I do, however, appreciate the privacy slider they've included with it. The mechanical keyboard is fantastic and is one of the best implementations I've seen on a gaming laptop, as is the quality and feel of the trackpad in its ideal location and size. The monitor is fantastic too. Whilst HDR isn't available, it looks fantastic, displays excellent colours, and the choice to go super high refresh rates at 1080p instead of a larger resolution at 17 inches is paying off dividends. Internally, the Intel Core i7-10875H, Nvidia RTX2070 Max Q, 16 gigs of RAM, killer Ethernet, Intel Wi-Fi 6 and WindForce Infinity cooling all add up to create a fantastic package. I'm disappointed by the choice of a single 512GB SSD here, however. The SSD itself is fine, being the Samsung PM981, but the choice of such a limited amount of storage is beyond me and screams, we cheaped out here a little, when 1TB is, I'd argue, a minimum for today's needs, especially when gaming is involved. Luckily, this is remedied with the 300Hz models that are more commonly available, as it looks like Gigabyte have heard complaints and are now using a 1TB NVMe M.2 SSD instead. Bravo. As well as having an empty M.2 slot for you to populate how you'd wish in the future, so some thought has gone into upgradability and, dare I say it, future-proofing. Azure AI needs another mention here. I was disappointed to find that the inclusion of the software package gave no discernible performance improvement. But as the Aorus 15G and 17G lineup are the first to implement it, I feel like it's still on an unofficial beta trial run and performance in the future could indeed benefit from it. Is gaming something Azure AI was even built for anyway? Now the elephant in the room, the price. I couldn't find a price for a single 240Hz panel Aorus 17G anywhere in the UK at the time of writing this video. Luckily though, I would wholeheartedly recommend the newer 300Hz with the 1TB of storage version anyway, so let's take a look at that one. UK retailer scan.co.uk have it in stock for £2,148.98, and for that I believe you are getting what you pay for. Sure, cheaper options are available, but you need to take into account the extra performance you are getting from the super variant of the RTX 2070. 256 more CUDA cores and a strong 8-core Intel Core i7 10th Gen mobile CPU is a good example here, as well as all the other features the 17G is offering over competitors' models. The Aorus 17G gets Players Gold Award for its awesome gaming performance, beautiful aesthetic, excellent choice of I/O and top tier internal components which make it an amazing gaming laptop. A big thank you to Gigabyte for sending over the Aorus 17G for me to review. Well, that's finally it from me. Thank you for joining. Once again, I've been Dave from Player TV. If you like this sort of content, please smash that like button, hit the subscribe and the bell down there in the corner, and I'll see you again in the next one. Bye bye for now.